Welcome back, and as we earlier said, our first segment is going to talk about economy, and Egypt's real GDP growth have reached 5.3 in 2018, which is the highest in a decade. The growth, of course, was associated with a decrease in unemployment to around 10% from 12 in 2017. And on the supply side, recoveries in the field of tourism, in natural gas production, also that sustained growth. To shed more light over these issues and the reason for that and more, we're very delighted to be having with us Dr. Zeinab Nawar, and she's a lecturer of economics. Good morning, Dr. Nawar.
Good morning, my dear.
Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
So I would like to start from the very beginning,
Yes.
talking about the economic reform program. And definitely, without such a reform program, definitely nothing could have happened, because talking about providing the stability of the market, the flotation of the Egyptian pounds, the exchange or the currency. So definitely all this paved the way for all this growth that we have witnessed in an unprecedented actually way in our history.
Yes, the economic reform, it's truly a necessity for Egypt, because before 2013 and the few years before 2013, we used to have what we call economic chaos. The economic system and the economic engineering at that time was not successful. And we couldn't, under any circumstances, under any means, we couldn't, for Egypt and for the sustainability of growth and for the development, we will not continue and functioning this way. So doing the economic reform was a base thing and very important thing for us. We cannot continue, we couldn't continue like what we used to have the few years before 2013 and the economic chaos we used to see at that time. So the starting from the economic reform program, it was very, very important to lessen the subsidies. I'm sorry to tell you, we know that the engineering subsidy used to consume a big portion from our budget. It used to be 6.6% from our GDP for the financial year 2013-2014, which consumes all the amount of money that we used to invest, and we supposedly to invest it in health and education and also on social services. So doing such a reduction in subsidy, it was a necessity, because we need to put more money in different resources, in other important resources, and also we need to lessen the budget deficit. We used to have budget deficit before the year 2013 for about 14% from our GDP, which is too much. So now we, of course, through the economic reform, we have the Egyptian government succeeded to lessen the deficit to be 9%, which is good. Apart from the saving that had been made by lessening the subsidies, the energy subsidies, part of it had been used to lessen the fiscal deficit, and part of it used to double the social protection projects that is now being implemented after a while to protect the poor in Egypt. So it was a necessity. It's very important when you would like to be part from the international world, and Egypt have to be linked and to be part from the international world. You have to tell them, I'm here and I'm in. So the first thing you have to tell them, I'm here and I'm in, to tell them that I do have a good macroeconomic indicators. I don't have big fiscal problems. I'm trying to lessen the budget deficit. I'm trying to less the subsidies given to the poor. Because if we would like to be part from the international world, if we would like to be a free market economy, we cannot continue like this. So this is what the economic reform had made, actually, to lessen the amount of fiscal deficit, also to try to get more resources for future projects. So we have to look at the Egyptians for the long term and for the medium and the long term for the benefit we would like to get. And it's impossible for us to continue the way that we used to work before 2013, because it was an economic chaos under any means.
In that sense, I would like to ask you about more elaboration over the issue of economic indicators and that the achievements that would result out of the realizing the economic indicators.
What is behind the scene and what is behind the economic indicators when we think about the increase in the GDP growth, and means that if you are talking about that we had achieved a GDP growth for 5%, means Egypt has successfully increased its production from goods and from services. When you're telling the international community that Egypt had achieved 5% increase in the growth, means increase in the production, means that we work more, we produce more, and we have less unemployment. Since the economy is growing, so this will be a prerequisite also for further growth. And since you started to work on a fiscal and monetary adjustment, so the next step will be structural adjustment. Actually, Egypt started part of now for the structural adjustment in the health sector, for example, for the pilot that had been made in Port Said, now is implemented in Port Said. So from where you will get the resources is from the resources you created from your growth, and also from working on making less deficit in the budget. So the economic indicators itself, although we're just telling numbers, but it tells truth behind it. It tells that when we grow, we are, as an economy, we have more growth, means we have more work, we have more chances for and opportunities for employment, so we'll have less unemployment. And also, since we are a growing economy, so we'll attract more investment. So all of this will give a good image about the economy, and this is what we do need to reflect it for the time being.
Right. Talking about the this tremendous achievements that took place, and talking also about the petroleum and gas sector, especially Egypt achieved a lot in this respect. What is the impact of this on Egyptian economy?
The impact of this on the Egyptian economy, I'll tell you that for the first time since years, we have surplus in the budget of the EGBC, the Petroleum Authority, which is running the petroleum sector. There is a surplus of money, which is by the year 2018, it was 28 billion Egyptian pounds at a surplus. This surplus was not achieved before. Of course, this surplus you have from this type of a lot of projects that you have worked on in the petroleum sector, so you will have money. This money will be injected also in the budget. So this, of course, will help to lessen the amount of budget deficit, and also will help that this money will be pumped into other important projects like health and education projects. So whatever you do in terms of petroleum investments and more important projects, first you employ a lot of engineers, a lot of labor at these companies. Second, you are just giving a good image about Egypt, and which is very important, and this is a thing that we have to focus on to attract more FDIs, because all the business around the world, they ask each other, and they ask carefully, and they need data, and they get data from everywhere. So when they see like one of the companies like Eni that's coming to Egypt and investing more than $1,650,000,000 a month, the daily rate of investment of any company as a company, petroleum company, is paying a daily investment rate in Zohr platform about 450,000. Multiply this by 3 days, multiply this by 12 platforms in Zohr, so you will get $1,650,000,000 in terms of investments. All of this money is injected into the Egyptian economy, so there will be surplus that the budget will benefit from, and also there will be people who are working in these projects, which is very important. Plus, of course, the positive image that we are going to give it to other investors, so we'll attract more investment in more diversified sectors to come to Egypt.
Very good. The growth was also associated with decrease in unemployment. So to what extent have new national projects reduce the unemployment rates?
The national projects reduce the unemployment rate because the national projects, okay, it asks a lot of people to come to work as a labor, and this is what happened in the real estate sector. The real estate sector and part of the national projects now are hiring a lot of people, are hiring a lot of engineers, are hiring a lot of experts, Egyptian experts, of course. So this will help to decrease the unemployment. Especially we are talking about the segments of the people who are working on a technical work and the poor people. So some of these sectors are very important to employ more people and to enhance and, of course, to lessen the unemployment rate. This is very important because the big projects, it gives hopes. It can also employ people. It can support the private sector. It can pull the private sector to come and to work together in the market. And this is what we do need to do.
Talking about the idea that we can never separate economy from political issues, and definitely both are moving in a parallel line. And we have seen the president during this term, actually, we've seen the focus on the infrastructure. If you want to build the economy of the country, there are many steps to be taken to pave the way for, especially for the direct and indirect foreign investments. And we have seen this in the infrastructure, in the mega projects, and all this paving the way. And definitely we start by the mega projects, then we will move on to the feeding industry for the mega projects, which one can consider as pillars of building the economy of any country.
Yes. Of course, the political stability is linked 100% with the economic stability, because people need to be employed, people need to be fed, they need to be educated and getting a good health services. If these base things people did not have it, of course will affect the political stability of any country. This is why the president is trying hardly to work on this program, and the faith also of the economic reform, because we are trying, the government is trying to pave the road for economic stability, and economic stability is linked with social stability also. And of course this all will be linked to political stability. You cannot ask someone who is poor, who is not having money, to be very silent and to be very peaceful. You cannot see, you can't tell him so. Also fighting the terrorism. Those people who are linked to work in this terrorism attack, part of it, the poverty that had led them to share and to be part of this. So it's very important to work on the economic growth, because we need to work on social stability when people, they feel that they are working and they are living a good standard of living, so there will be no political issues and political problems. The mega projects, of course, it paved the way for employment, and the mega projects, and especially the infrastructure projects, is very important, because I would like I would link what is happening in the infrastructure project with what is happening at ports. It's all linked together. It's all one cycle. If you talk about, I'm going to do investment for ports and encouraging more ships to come into the Egyptian ports, because we need to get money out of it. We need to have more resources, and we need to employ people also for different economic activities. So I cannot talk about economic whatever enhancement of the ports. I cannot talk about the free zone in the Suez Canal without having the proper roads that will help the investor and the Egyptian whatever manufacturer to go to the port. So part of the infrastructure projects we have is to facilitate the trade, even between governorates, even between one governorate and also the different ports we do have. And also when we talk about the infrastructure projects, it's very important to mention what is we have now in terms of linking Sinai with the Delta.
Yes,
if I'm going to fight corruption, terrorism, I'm sorry, and corruption is part of the,
of course,
we'll talk
yes.
about it, because corruption is part of the structural adjustment, which is also very important. So when we talk about that we need to link Sinai with the Delta, this is a necessity, because we can't live people of Sinai isolated anymore. Because people of Sinai, actually the Bedouin living there, they are truly isolated. They face a lot of problems, like the increase in the prices of food. So we need to work with these people. We need to work into more projects in Sinai to develop Sinai. So again, the economic reform, it's a stage, and the mega projects, it's all the stages into future projects that will achieve the development for Egypt and for further enhancement and development for the country as a whole.
When we talk about steps to decrease the budget deficit, of course, that would require a plan and strategies and studies, so that we can see the best program that could be fit to decrease the deficit of a nation. Our economic reform program have been marked as very successful, and we're starting to bear the fruits. So if you talk to us about the relation between our economic reform program and the decrease that happened and was effected in the budget deficit.
The decrease that happened in the budget deficit, of course, the IMF and the World Bank, and especially when we talk about the outlook, many outlook that is issued by the IMF, They have been talking about the successful of the economic reform and how it was handled, and also the decrease in the budget deficit. This was linked that when the government decreased the budget deficit, which had been decreased to be 9%, also when the Egyptian government lowered the subsidies, so there was a saving of 14 billion Egyptian pounds. These savings, part of it had been pumped into the fiscal deficit to lessen the fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit before 2013 was 14%. Now it was, for the year 2018, it is 9%. From where we had lessen this gap. We lessened this gap through, of course, increasing the resources that are coming from the petroleum sector and investment in petroleum. Also, the increase in investment that are coming to Egypt, it will help to increase more resources. Also, the reform in taxation regime that helps to create more resources. And now, to lessen the subsidy, this will create more resources also to lessen the gap between the expenses and the revenue. And part of this saving, which is 14 billion Egyptian pound, have been also pumped to the social security program, which has been the amount of money that's pumped to these programs have been doubled. So it's about, of course, it's about the process, it's about the stages, it's about also that it had been implemented. I see it was not an aggressive implement, it's truly a slowly one by all means till now. And of course it will be more, there will be more successful implementation when we talk about the structural adjustment later on, after we finish this economic reform. The economic reform with the IMF, now we are saying the economic reform with the IMF, but after we just finish from this economic reform with the IMF, we have our economic reform is to continue to achieve more growth and more development.
Talking about the importance, now we can see we have many projects, as you mentioned, and talking also about the new cities that are constructed now on the ground, providing many different kinds of job opportunities for the youth. How important is this and the impact, again, on the Egyptian economy?
The impact of the new cities that have been, they're working on it now. First, I think it's something related to the bureaucracy. And if we talk about the governmental institutions, I used to work in a government institution before. We used to have very crowded places. How you can imagine that a governmental, an employee, he used to give you a certain service, work in this unfriendly atmosphere. You need to move to another place where you can have these spaces for people to work. You need to give a good image about the country, that you are a modern country. And
I think this will take us to the idea of the importance of the digital economy.
Of course, because implementing the digital economy means lessen the corruption, and this is what we have to come back to it. Because corruption is eating the growth and development. When you have an investor coming into your country, and he needs to fill a lot of applications, and he needs to pay money for whatever, but the employee, that whatever, the one who is responsible, and now you feel that there will be a corruption from the one who is responsible, so this businessman will leave the country. But when you work on digital systems, so everything will be using the ATMs, the computer, so you will minimize the interaction between the government officials as much as you can.
And
so
will lessen the bureaucracy also.
And you, of course, lessen the bureaucracy. So you will just try to keep this investor into the system. And also, when you travel in different countries, you will see now everything has been
international standards.
This way. So maybe if he came to us and he can't understand the system and he can't understand what's going on, he easily can just give up and leave the country. And this is what we don't want this to happen. We want this investor to be here, even if he came and he didn't invest, but tell to other investors and to the others that the country is good. There is a good environment for investors. People are friendly. They are working on several reforms, so you can come in and see.
And from that came also the directions of the president to be finalized with the one-stop shop for the foreign investors.
Yes. I have a case of one of the investors that they would like to invest in Egypt. I called a friend in the Ministry of Investment. Actually, it took him a few days just to know about the environment, just to know how, the stages and the steps. Of course, he has a
Of course,
lawyer.
he's going to invest money in the country.
He needs to ask about
do
everything.
his investigations.
Yes. So coming only for a few days, and to know everything, and from one place to know all the steps and procedures, this is a big achievement, because these people used to come to Egypt and spend maybe months. And we have cases when we used to work in the government before, this is before 2013, they may stay for Egypt for 1 month, 1.5 months, and just going from a place into another, and then they feel that at the end they didn't
Without
achieve
achieving anything.
and then they just leave the country. Sometimes they try to come to any of the ministers to meet. This is, we're just putting a lot of burden on these people. We need to encourage them.
I think
So of
also
course this will help them a lot.
we have to admit the clear change in the banking sector also in Egypt, providing the facilities needed for investors, especially when it comes, for example, to the exit barriers. And now we have they can easily transfer money, and this will help a lot again in attracting foreign investments to Egypt. It used to be the main challenge, actually.
Of course, when we talk about the hot money and people who are coming to invest in stock and bonds, or to invest in one of the bonds issued by the government, so you have to give them this message that you are free to come and invest. For example, if you're going to invest put your money for a certain interest rate for 3 months, for example, so you can easily, and if you'd like to leave the country and to get your money back, so you can do it. And of course, recently we became so attractive for the hot money coming into Egypt because of the high interest rate we used to give to the investors, and also for the exit strategy. Anytime you'd like to leave the country and to get your investments to another country, so you are free to do so, so there is no problem.
Dr. Zeinab Mohammed Nawar, you are a lecturer of economics. We'd like to thank you very much for coming over this morning. You have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
We're going to go to a short break, and we'll come back to you, so stay with us.